All right, so let's talk about the JJ Redick hire. And this is a hire, I think it was made like a week ago, a week and a half, something like that. And I still have mixed feelings about it. I'm not gonna lie to you. Like when it was first announced, I really wasn't the biggest fan of it. Not because of JJ Redick, which I'll explain throughout the video, and I'm still not. And again, it's not because of JJ Redick. Because let me make this clear just off rip. JJ Redick, as if you've watched the Mind in the Game podcast, you know this. He has a brilliant basketball mind. You can tell he's obviously passionate about the game. Like he's not one of those guys that was in the league for 15 years just because he had the talent and wanted the money. Yeah, I'm sure that helped. But you can tell he's really passionate about the game of basketball. You can really tell he loves the game of basketball, right? So, and as from Mind the Game podcast, I can tell that he has a beautiful basketball mind for the X's and O's and everything like that. Like, I believe JJ Redick is a very intelligent person and has a very intelligent basketball mind. So let me make that clear. I do not believe that's the problem with this coaching hire. And really, there were some people that were worried about JJ Redick. Like, will he captivate the locker room? Will he be able to take command of a locker room, especially when he's younger than LeBron James, when he's got the superstar of LeBron James, who he just had a podcast with? And I actually believe that's going to help him. I believe the fact that he just had a podcast with the star player on the team, the biggest draw in all of basketball, still him and Steph Curry, to me, are still the two biggest draws in all of basketball in terms of, like, marketing media-wise, you know what I'm saying? People were like, will he be able to get control of that locker room? Will he have LeBron's respect? I believe he already has LeBron's respect. I not only believe he has LeBron's respect, I believe the fact that him and LeBron James had this basketball podcast that I think they did like 10 episodes of so far, something like that. I don't know, something like that. The fact that they had that podcast where those two could just rap about basketball, where those two could just have those conversations without even being coach and player, before Darvin Ham was even fired, that podcast came out. Before the playoffs even started, that podcast came out. So it's like the fact that they were able to build that relationship on that podcast before any of this coaching stuff ever came out, I think that's a big thing, because I think that's not only going to help gain LeBron's respect. I think once the fact that he already has LeBron's respect will mean the rest of the locker room should be easy for him. But here are the problems I have with the hire. Are they going to give JJ Redick the power that he needs to be successful? Because, not the power, I guess. I don't think power is the right word. It's, are they going to give him the chances? Are they going to give him the time to really do the things that he needs to do? Because he's a first-time head coach, first of all. And then second of all, this is a team that has a lot of problems. You can't just give JJ Redick a year or two or three and expect him to turn things around. You just got almost swept. Did they get swept? Did they win a game? I think they won a game. Did they get swept? Hold on. Now I have to remember. I can't remember. Lakers versus Nuggets round one. I have to know. Because there's no way they got swept. No, it was 4-1. Okay, it was a gentleman's sweep. Whew, Lord have mercy. Okay, so it was a gentleman's sweep. They just got gentleman's swept by Denver. Now, obviously, Denver was one of those teams that a lot of people thought were genuine championship contenders. They didn't end up making it that far, but you know what I'm saying? Denver was a respectable team. It's not like they went out there and got gentleman's swept by some bums. It's not that. But with this current roster, we've seen the ceiling. That Western Conference Finals appearance where they did get swept versus Denver 2 years ago, that was the ceiling. And then they came back and they brought back a team that I personally thought was better and had a lot more depth, which is why I thought they were one of those teams that, even though I didn't expect them to do great in the regular season, I did expect them to do better in the playoffs, because it was like the team seemed deeper. The team seemed like they had more reliable bench options. They got guys like Gabe Vincent, Taurean Prince, and all these guys. And then Gabe Vincent almost didn't play for the whole season. D'Angelo Russell turned back into a bomb. Rui Hachimura didn't do a doggone thing versus Denver. It was bad, right? It was bad. We all know it was bad. And this is a roster that has problems. Like, the roster as it is right now is the biggest problem with the Lakers. I never thought it was coaching. Now, granted, I don't think Darvin Ham was a great coach. I do not believe that. I do believe he was a problem. But I'm saying the biggest problem for this franchise and for this team right now is simply the roster. So if you just put JJ Redick in there and you give him the track record that we've seen with the last 6 or 7 coaches they've had over the last decade since Phil Jackson left in, 2011, 2012, if you give him the same timeline that you gave all those other coaches, where it's 2 to 3 years max, dumbest hire on the planet. Because what do you expect him to do? That's why I have mixed feelings about about this hire, because I have mixed feelings about the organization's ability or willingness to let JJ Redick get to the point where he can be successful. Look what Michael Malone and the Denver Nuggets. It took him, 8-10 years of being head coach before they even got good, and then before they won a ring? like Joe Mazzulla is the exception, right? Because Joe Mazzulla, he was first year as head coach, he made it to conference finals. The next year, he won a championship. But the difference is the roster was there. They did a roster overhaul after losing to Miami in 7 games in the conference finals that made the roster even better. Joe Mazzulla is a basketball genius. I believe JJ Redick is too, but JJ Redick doesn't have that Boston Celtics roster. And that's the problem with this hire. He doesn't have that Boston Celtics organization that's going to be willing to give him time as the head coach. He doesn't have that. We have seen that the Lakers, time and time again, no matter what the biggest problem is, the first thing they're going to do, especially since LeBron has been there, is they fire in that coach. Y'all brought in Russell Westbrook and overhauled your whole roster after winning a championship, and then what did you do? You fired Frank Vogel. Y'all made it to the Western Conference Finals. Darvin Ham's first year as a coach got swept to the Denver Nuggets and lost to that same team as that they were the 2 seed in 5 games. And what'd you do? You fired Darvin Ham. Granted, like I'm saying, I don't believe either of those guys were perfect coaches, were great coaches, you know what I'm saying? If they were great coaches, Frank Vogel would still have a job right now today. But I believe Frank Vogel was a solid coach that they gave up on too early. I believe Frank Vogel was a scapegoat for that Russell Westbrook trade. I believe that. I believe Darvin Ham became a scapegoat for a roster that simply wasn't built to beat the Denver Nuggets. Now, again, I don't believe Darvin Ham was a good coach at all. I believe Frank Vogel was a much better coach. I believe JJ Redick has the potential to be a better coach than both of them combined. That might sound crazy to say because he hasn't coached a single NBA game yet, but you understand what I'm saying. You can see why I'm saying that. I'm not one of those people that thinks he's a Pat Riley already. Like, let's give him a year first. Let's see how he coaches. Let's see what his coaching style is before we start calling him Pat Riley, one of the most memorable, great coaches of all time, and then another guy that's now a GM. Let's relax with all of that. But the problem with this hire is simply the fact that I don't believe the Lakers are going to give him the time he needs to become a successful coach. Steve Kerr, he had the Golden State Warriors roster in his first year, and he inherited that from Mark Jackson. They simply just needed a little change. This isn't that team. This team needs a lot of changes. This team has a lot of things they need to fix before if they want to win another ring while LeBron is still there. What does LeBron have with the player extension? 2 more years on his career? 2 more years on the contract, I think? Like, come on, bro. Like, that, if you were only going to give JJ Redick that much time, it was the dumbest hire in the world. You should have went out there and got one of these Mark Jacksons, Stan Van Gundy's, Jeff Van Gundy's. You should have went out there, or I think not Stan, Jeff Van Gundy. You should have went out there and got one of those guys. If you just wanted the coach to get 2 years, because at least then you have a coach that has coached before. But if you're only going to give a first-time coach 2 to 3 years to coach, that's the dumbest thing ever. What do you expect him to do, especially when the roster isn't up to par? The West is only getting better. We just saw that the Thunder got Alex Caruso. The West is only getting better. The East is going to continue to get better because we're going to see a lot of these players from the West, like Paul George, like Klay Thompson maybe. We're going to see these guys potentially go over to the East and make that even better. The East should be more healthy next year, so that makes it even better already. The Magic with Paolo Banchero, they're going to get better next year. The Pacers, they're going to get better next year probably. The 76ers, if they're healthy, we know what they can be, at least regular season-wise. The Bucks, if they're healthy, they have Dame and Giannis now. They have a lot of questions, but like the league is getting better. The league isn't going to be worse next year, talent-wise, in the East or the West. So if you're only going to that's my problem with the hire isn't JJ Redick being the coach. It's will Jeanie Buss and will Rob Pelinka give him the time he needs to try to become a successful coach? That's the problem. Will they give him the roster he needs to try to become a successful coach? Because right now, I don't see how. I don't see how they can fix that roster to make it a team in the West that's respectable. They're already respectable because they have LeBron and AD, so you're automatically respectable. But, like, will you make it one of those teams that can genuinely contend? Because if you can keep LeBron and AD and get the right pieces around them, can you make that team contend? I need water. I'm so sorry. So you have LeBron and AD. That's great. Will you give them the surrounding pieces they need? Will you give JJ Redick the surrounding pieces that fit not only on the court but in the locker room that can make him a successful coach, that can help him to become a successful coach? Because if you aren't, then it's the dumbest hire on the planet. If you aren't, then... And the thing that makes me think they aren't willing to give a coach the time and the respect that they deserve to try to become successful, look at the offer they threw Dan Hurley, the UConn coach. You weren't even willing to give him top 5 coach money to come and to leave a program where he has won back-to-back March Madness national championships in college. You didn't even want to make him a top 5 highest paid coach for that? So that tells me that they don't even value a coach, or that they have money problems. It's one of the two, but to me, that tells me that they don't even value a coach and they don't even respect the coach enough because they think, oh, well, we have LeBron and AD, we'll try, we'll be fine. So that tells me that JJ Redick could end up being a scapegoat again, and I'm just looking at past history. Okay, the best way to evaluate someone's future actions is to look at their past actions. So let's look at what the Lakers have done since Phil Jackson got fired. You look at that. How many coaches have they had? 7 or 8 since then? Brother, Phil Jackson left in like 2011, 2012. That wasn't that long ago. Like, it was a decade ago, but it wasn't that long ago. It wasn't 20 years ago you've had 7 coaches. Coach Pop has been the coach of San Antonio since the 90s. It's 2024. I get it, that's one of the greatest coaches of all time. Some people think the greatest coach of all time or whatever. But still. Like, what, brother? You want me to believe that? The hire is great for JJ Redick. First of all, congratulations to JJ Redick. I believe JJ Redick has a lot of potential as a coach, just because he knows the X's and O's of basketball so well, and he's one of those guys that, what was he in the league for 15 years, made the playoffs, 15 or 14 times out of his 15-year career? And he was one of those guys that was a leader on every team he was on. I have no questions about him being able to lead that locker room, especially when he has LeBron James already on his side. At least I believe, I assume, I would hope. I have no questions about his ability to do that. I have questions about the Lakers' ability to, 1, give him the roster, and 2, give him the time. It's my thoughts on it. I want to hear your thoughts, though, because I didn't articulate my thoughts well with the homies in the group chat and everything like that when this hire first happened. They thought I was hating on JJ, but it wasn't that I was hating on JJ. It's that I was hating on the Lakers and their track record. That's what it was. I'm not. So to any of my homies that may be watching this, I'm not hating on. I was never hating on JJ Redick. For one, I never thought he was their number 1 option, and the fact that they offered Dan Hurley first tells me that he was not their number 1 option at first. So that's what because my friend Jalen was trying to tell me months ago that JJ Redick was the number 1, and I'm like, I don't think he is. And then number 2, I just don't trust the Lakers organization to take care of a coach like JJ, to give him the time to allow him to become what they think he can become. If you think he can become a Pat Riley type coach, you better give him the time to become that. You better allow him to do that. Anyways, I love y'all. Appreciate y'all. Keep God first. Stay praying. Please, 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 please spread the gospel. I love y'all.